The auction hall pulsed with a nervous tension, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. Station Vera Prime, a sprawling hub on the farthest edge of mapped space, had seen many deals made in its shadowy chambers, but nothing with stakes this high. Traders, mercenaries, collectors, and opportunists filled the concentric chrome seats, their voices lowered to whispers that carried like static in the recycled air. Credit chips clinked against tables, while data screens flickered with numbers that seemed to dance just beyond comprehension. At the center of the amphitheater, a containment field shimmered like a living wall, humming with the power required to cage something truly dangerous. Inside that field stood the prize, a figure who drew every gaze, even among the most jaded eyes of the galaxy. Terran Vey, a human dressed in a patched spacer's coat, sat quietly among the crowd, his weathered hands folded to keep them from trembling. He had been planning this moment for years, surviving on trade runs that skimmed the borders of war zones and pirate strongholds, saving every unit of currency he could scrape together. Unlike the others present, he wasn't here for profit or prestige. His reasons were carved into him like scars, too deep to be shaken by the murmurs of the mob. The announcer, a six-eyed Vorthan with a voice as sharp as broken glass, raised his arms for silence. Lot 921. A warrior of the extinct Kareth lineage. Female. Age approximately 22 standard years. Combat rating, Omega class. Caution, subject has terminated 17 previous holders. His tone was confident, but beneath it, there was strain. He knew what he was presenting. The containment field flickered, and a collective gasp rolled through the hall. The warrior towered nearly 7 feet tall, her skin a luminous blue that seemed almost to glow under the sterile lights. Faint scars patterned her arms and shoulders, each a silent testament to battle survived. Her hair, long and crimson, was woven into braids adorned with fragments of bone and metal, trophies from enemies who would never rise again. And her eyes, golden, molten, alive with fury, cut across the crowd like blades. Her name, known to those who feared her legend, was Kilena. Among her people she had been called the Stormborn, daughter of a war chief whose name was etched into galactic history, Verath the Unbroken. Yet here, she was little more than an item, a commodity to be purchased. She had not spoken in 6 months of captivity. She did not need to. Her silence was thunder, her stare a promise of blood. Bidding began at 50,000 credits. A hush fell heavier than steel. Traders glanced sideways at one another, but none dared to speak. Even hardened slavers shifted uneasily in their seats, calculating insurance costs and the short life expectancy of anyone foolish enough to claim her. The announcer cleared his throat, already preparing to move on to the next lot. 50,000, came a voice. Every head turned. It was Terran. His words hung in the air like a flare in deep space. He spoke not with bravado, but with a steadiness that unsettled the crowd even more than arrogance would have. Murmurs spread like wildfire. A single human bidding on a Karathi berserker. It was lunacy. Didn't he know they could smell fear from across a room, could break hull plating with their bare hands? Inside the containment field, Kilena's golden eyes locked onto him. For the first time since her capture, her gaze sharpened with interest. The announcer faltered but recovered quickly. 50,000, going once, going twice, his words raced, as if afraid to give anyone else time to intervene. Silence. No counterbids. No one dared. Sold, the Vorthan snapped, relief evident as the credits were transferred, documents signed, and the containment field powered down. The audience wasted no time dispersing. No one wanted to linger and witness what surely came next. The bloody execution of the fool who had just purchased death incarnate. Terran rose slowly, his hands open and empty, and walked toward the warrior who now stood unrestrained. She loomed over him, her shadow swallowing his smaller frame. Yet he did not flinch. "I'm Terran," he said softly, his voice calm. "And you are Kilena, daughter of Verath, stormborn of the Kareth clans." Her eyes narrowed. It had been months since anyone had spoken her name, let alone her lineage. "I didn't buy you to own you," Terran continued, every word deliberate. "I bought you to set you free." A low growl rumbled from her throat, harsh and grating, the sound of stone grinding against stone. When she finally spoke, her voice was jagged from disuse. "No one frees a Kareth. We take freedom in blood and fire." From inside his coat, Terran withdrew a datapad and extended it toward her. On its screen blinked a star map, routes traced in glowing red. "Your homeworld, Karos, has been located." Getting there means cutting through pirate nebulae, hegemony territory, and 3 syndicate systems. Every captain I asked refused. He smiled faintly. "But I'm not every captain." Kilena's gaze flickered to the device, then back to the small, stubborn human standing before her. "Why?" she demanded. Terran drew in a breath. 3 years ago, warriors of your kind defended a colony ship, my sister's ship, when raiders ambushed it. They asked nothing in return. Said it was their duty to protect the innocent. My sister never forgot. Neither did I. The galaxy paints you as monsters because it is easier than admitting the truth. But I know better." For a long moment, the chamber held only silence. Security officers fidgeted at the edges, ready to intervene but uncertain what that would even mean. Kilena extended one massive, calloused hand. She could have crushed his skull like glass. Instead, she took the datapad with a surprising gentleness.
Terran's voice was quiet but unwavering. "My ship is the Ember Arkansas. She's fast, heavily upgraded, and ready for this mission. If you'll trust me, Stormborn, we can reach Karos in 2 weeks." Kilena studied him as though searching for deceit. Instead, she found something rarer, conviction without fear. Slowly, deliberately, she lowered her hand, not in threat, but in an oath of equality. "Terran of the Ember Ark," she said, her voice carrying the weight of a vow, "you have shown courage worthy of a Kareth. I accept you as battle brother." Their hands clasped. For the first time, Kilena's lips curved into something almost unthinkable, a smile. To the security chief watching from the shadows, it was the most terrifying sight imaginable. But to Terran, it was something else entirely. It was hope. Terran sat at the helm of the Ember Ark, fingers moving across the flight controls with the ease of long familiarity. The ship was not beautiful by galactic standards. Its plating bore mismatched repairs, and its engines carried the rumble of countless overhauls, but every scar in its hull was a story, every patch a promise that it had survived where sleeker crafts had been lost. The Ark was a survivor, just like its pilot. Behind him, Kilena moved through the narrow cabin like a caged storm. Even without the containment field, her presence seemed to generate its own gravity. Her golden eyes scanned every surface, evaluating, calculating. The low ceiling forced her to bow her head slightly, but it did not diminish her aura of power. If anything, it made her seem like a predator coiled and waiting to strike. "You call this a warship?" she asked finally, her voice edged with disbelief. Terran didn't flinch. "I call it a ship that gets me where I need to go. Fast, quiet, stubborn. You'll see." Her frown deepened, but she said nothing. She had agreed to this alliance, true, but an oath spoken in the heat of defiance was not the same as trust. She would need proof, not words. As the Ark pulled free of Vera Prime's docking clamps, the stars spilled open before them in a glittering field of endless possibility. Terran's breath eased. The station fell away behind, shrinking into irrelevance. Ahead lay the dangerous currents of pirate space, the roving patrols of the hegemony, and the uncertain path home. He knew every light in that sky carried risk, yet for the first time in years, the burden of fear felt lighter. Kilena leaned close to the viewport, her reflection fierce against the starlight. Karos lies beyond the belt of ash, she said, more to herself than to him. If it has truly been found, her voice faltered. For a heartbeat, Terran glimpsed something softer behind the steel, a longing that had not been crushed even by chains. I wouldn't have risked everything if I wasn't sure, he replied. But the journey will test us both. The first test came sooner than either expected. 2 days into their flight, as the Ark drifted through a nebula of crimson gases, alarms howled. Terran cursed, his hands flying to the console. On the scope, jagged signatures flared, pirates. 4 of them, swooping from the gas clouds like carrion birds, their ships bristling with jury-rigged weapons. Stay calm, Terran muttered. I've danced this waltz before. Kilena's eyes gleamed. Then let me see how the human dances. The Ark twisted as Terran threw her into evasive maneuvers, rolling between streaks of plasma fire. The hull shuddered under glancing hits, but the shields held. He fired back, twin cannons blazing, clipping one pirate's wing and sending the craft spiraling into the gas clouds. 3 left, he hissed. They'll try to box us in. Kilena strode to the weapons station without asking permission. Her massive fingers flew across the interface with startling precision, rerouting power, locking targets. When the next pirate ship swung into range, she unleashed a barrage so devastating that it exploded in a storm of fire and debris. Terran glanced over his shoulder, startled. You've handled starship weapons before. Warriors learn every weapon of war, she replied flatly, eyes burning as she targeted the next foe. Within minutes, the remaining ships were nothing but wreckage drifting in the nebulous haze. The Ark floated on, smoke trailing from her hull but still alive. Terran let out a long breath, sweat running down his temple. Not bad, he admitted. Kilena's lips curved in the faintest smile. You dance better than I expected. Later, when the alarms quieted and the stars steadied, they sat in the galley, if the cramped space with mismatched chairs could be called that. Terran patched a gash on his arm from where a panel had blown during the fight. Kilena watched, her golden eyes unblinking. You risked everything, she said at last. Your credits, your life, your ship. All to bring me to Karos. Why? He set down the med patch and met her gaze. Because once, your people risked everything for strangers they didn't even know. My sister lived because of that. She raised children because of that. I don't forget debts like that. Kilena leaned back, her expression unreadable. Honor, she murmured. The galaxy laughs at the word, but you speak it as if it still means something. It means everything, Terran said simply. For a long time, she said nothing. The ship hummed around them, carrying them deeper into the unknown. Then, slowly, Kilena extended her arm across the table. Not in threat, not in dominance, just an offering. Terran clasped it, forearm to forearm. Then you are not merely captain, she said softly, voice like distant thunder. You are kin. The moment hung between them, fragile but unbreakable, a pact formed not by contract or blood, but by choice. In that fragile connection, Terran sensed the beginning of something the galaxy itself could not easily crush. Days later, the Ark emerged from hyperspace into the starfields bordering hegemony territory. Patrols glided like predators across the system, their angular ships marked with the insignia of conquest. The star map flickered, tracing dangerous routes among them. Terran tightened his grip on the controls. This is where things get harder. Kilena leaned forward, her eyes reflecting the endless stars. Then let us show the galaxy what two outcasts can do. The Ember Arc plunged onward, carrying with it a pact of honor strong enough to defy empires. The Ember Arc slipped through the black between suns, her engines whispering like a predator moving through tall grass. Every day carried them deeper into contested territory, where maps blurred and power shifted as quickly as the stars. Terran's eyes rarely left the console, scanning for anomalies, adjusting course, coaxing every bit of speed and silence from his patched-together ship. Kilena sat nearby, her massive frame nearly filling the co-pilot's chair. She was not idle, her gaze tracked the patterns of patrol routes, the drift of asteroid clusters, the faint signatures of hidden stations. Her instincts, sharpened through a lifetime of war, caught things even the scanners sometimes missed. Where Terran saw data, she saw intent. Where he plotted vectors, she predicted ambushes. Neither admitted it aloud, but they were beginning to move in rhythm. On the third week, the rhythm faltered. The Ark exited hyperspace into a graveyard. Dozens of ships, freighters, escorts, even war cruisers, floated gutted and lifeless, their hulls shredded as though chewed by a monster with teeth of plasma. Fire still flickered on some wrecks, faint and stubborn, like candles in the void. Terran's breath caught. Raiders didn't do this. No, Kilena said, her voice low. This is the work of syndicate packs. They swarm and strip. Nothing survives. As if summoned by her words, the Ark sensor screamed. A fleet of smaller vessels slid from behind the wreckage, engines hot, weapons primed. They flew in tight formation, like a school of predators encircling prey. At their center loomed a larger vessel, scarred but commanding, its hull marked with the sigil of the Crimson Maw Syndicate. Terran's knuckles whitened on the controls. They'll want our ship intact. Kilena rose, her eyes ablaze. Then we give them nothing. The first barrage slammed into the Ark, rattling the hull. Terran banked hard, rolling through debris fields, weaving between the skeletons of shattered freighters. He cursed under his breath, hands moving faster than thought. Kilena manned the weapons again, her strikes precise and merciless, turning wreckage into shields, vaporizing smaller ships when they pressed too close. But there were too many. For every pirate destroyed, two more closed in. They're hurting us, Kilena snarled. Toward the flagship, Terran realized. He pulled up a readout, grimacing at the power output of the larger vessel. Its cannons could vaporize the Ark in seconds. The trap snapped shut. A voice crackled over comms, dripping with smug cruelty. Little Ark, it drawled, cut your engines and surrender. We'll keep the human breathing if he begs nicely. The blue-skinned prize? She belongs to us now. Kilena's growl reverberated through the cabin. Let me board them. I'll tear them apart from within. Terran's jaw clenched. He knew she could do it, but she would never make it back alive. And he wasn't prepared to sacrifice the one hope he had fought for. His eyes darted to the wreckage around them, searching for anything, any advantage. Then he saw it, the fractured husk of a battlecruiser, its reactor still leaking volatile plasma. Hold on, he said. He spun the Ark in a brutal arc, engines screaming as he dove straight toward the glowing wreck. The syndicate ships followed, confident, hungry. Kilena steadied herself against the walls, eyes wide. You're mad, she shouted over the alarms. Not mad, Terran shot back, teeth gritted. Desperate. At the last possible second, he threaded the Ark through a gap in the shattered hull. The syndicate ships pursued, but as they crossed the leaking plasma cloud, Terran fired a single, well-aimed shot into the debris. The explosion was blinding. A chain reaction tore through the graveyard, ripping syndicate vessels apart in a storm of fire. The Ark tumbled violently, alarms wailing, systems flickering, but somehow she held together. When the light faded, silence returned. Only drifting wreckage remained of the hunters. Kilena stared at Terran, breathing hard, her golden eyes blazing not with fury this time, but something sharper. You fly like a warrior fights, she said. He gave a shaky laugh. And you shoot like a storm made flesh. Guess we make a decent pair. Later, in the quiet aftermath, they worked together to repair the damage. Kilena's strength bent twisted plating back into place, while Terran's steady hands rerouted fried circuits. Sweat streaked his brow, and streaks of grease marked her skin, but neither complained. When the ship finally hummed back to life, they collapsed into the galley, exhausted. For a long while, neither spoke. Then Kilena broke the silence. You risked both our lives for a chance. You gambled against impossible odds. That is something my people would call honor. Terran looked up at her, surprised by the softness in her tone. Coming from you, that means more than credits ever could. She tilted her head, studying him. You are small, fragile, and reckless. Yet you do not break. You remind me of the first sparks that light a fire. Her words settled between them like an unspoken vow. For the first time since leaving captivity, Kilena allowed herself to believe that home might truly be within reach. But the journey was not yet over. Ahead loomed the belt of ash, a region where suns burned themselves to embers and gravity twisted paths into knots. Few ships entered and returned. On the other side lay Karos, her long-lost world. As the ark approached, Terran adjusted their course, his voice steady. We've come too far to stop now. Kilena rested her massive hand on the console beside his, her touch surprisingly gentle. Then let us finish this together, battle brother. The stars beyond the viewport flickered like torches, guiding them toward destiny. The belt of ash was unlike anything Terran had ever flown through. Suns collapsed into embers, casting shadows that stretched like claws across the void. Chunks of dead worlds drifted, pulled by chaotic gravities that twisted paths into mazes. The ember arc creaked with every shift, her hull straining as if protesting the madness of her captain's chosen route. Kilena stood by the viewport, her golden eyes reflecting the dying starlight. Her body tensed with every lurch of the ship, but not from fear. For her, this place was a threshold. Beyond it lay Karos, the world her people had bled for, the home she had dreamed of in chains. Are you certain of the coordinates? She asked. Terran nodded, though his throat was dry. The archives were clear. Past the ash belt, on the edge of hegemony maps, Karos still turns. Her breath caught at the name. She pressed a fist against her chest, as though steadying the storm inside. Hours stretched into days as the ark clawed her way through the belt. At times, gravity surged so sharply the ship screamed like a wounded beast. At others, silence pressed so heavily that even their breaths sounded dangerous. Through it all, Terran and Kilena worked in tandem, rerouting power, adjusting shields, correcting course by instinct as much as calculation. And then, at last, the stars opened. Karos hung before them, a world of cobalt seas and jagged continents wrapped in swirling storms. It was beautiful, fierce, and alive in ways no archive could ever capture. Kilena's knees buckled as she saw it, and for the first time, her voice trembled. My home, she whispered. By the fire of the ancestors, it still lives. Terran allowed himself a small smile. Told you I wasn't completely mad. But their relief shattered in the next heartbeat. A fleet rose from the planet's orbit, angular ships bearing the insignia of the hegemony, engines burning bright with occupation. The oppressors had claimed Karos, twisting it into another jewel in their iron crown. The largest vessel, a dreadnought bristling with cannons, turned its gaze upon the Ember Ark. Kilena's fury ignited. They defile my world. Terran's hands danced across the console, scanning the fleet. We can't fight them head-on. Not even close. She gripped the back of his chair, her voice sharp with fire. Then we strike where it matters. The dreadnought is their command. Break it, and the chains loosen. His mind screamed against the insanity, but his heart knew there was no other path. He nodded. One shot at this. If we miss, we're done. The Ark dove toward the dreadnought, weaving through swarms of fighter craft. Plasma fire streaked past, lighting the void in streaks of crimson and white. Kilena manned the cannons, her strikes carving open enemy wings with the precision of a blade. Terran forced the ship through maneuvers no engineer would dare, engines howling as he squeezed every ounce of speed from the Ark's battered frame. A missile clipped their starboard, spinning them into a spiral. Sparks rained through the cabin, alarms screaming. Terran fought the controls, gritting his teeth. Hold together, girl. Just a little longer. Kilena's golden eyes blazed. She rerouted power from life support into the forward shields without hesitation. Better to die in fire than live in chains. The dreadnought loomed ahead, a fortress in the void. Its cannons locked on them, energy surging for a killing blow. Terran whispered a silent prayer to no one in particular, then shouted, "Now!" Kilena unleashed everything the Ark had left, cannons, missiles, even emergency thrusters rigged as weapons. The blast struck the dreadnought's reactor core, ripping through armor, shattering shields. A chain of explosions lit the darkness like a second sun. The dreadnought split open, its pieces falling toward Keros in burning arcs. The fleet faltered, chaos spreading through their formation. Fighters peeled away, leaderless and broken. In the Ark's cabin, silence followed, broken only by the hiss of damaged systems. Terran slumped against his chair, chest heaving. We actually did it. Kilena stood over him, her chest rising and falling, her crimson hair wild around her scarred face. Her expression was fierce, but her voice softened. No. We did it. When the Ark descended toward Keros, signals began flooding in. Karathi voices, ragged but unbroken, rising from the planet's surface. Resistance fighters, survivors, clans who had hidden their fire but never let it die. Kilena answered in her own tongue, her words carrying strength like a battle song. As the ship broke through the clouds, Keros greeted them with thunder and rain. The world seemed alive, as though recognizing the return of its storm-born daughter. Kilena looked down at the blue seas of her people and then at the human beside her. You risked everything for a promise. For me. Why? Terran's lips curled into a weary smile. Because once, your people saved mine. Because honor still matters. And because somewhere between the stars, I stopped seeing you as a weapon and started seeing you as hope. For a long moment, Kilena said nothing. Then, with deliberate care, she placed her massive hand over his. Then hope and honor will walk together on Keros. The Ember Ark descended into the storm, carrying with it not just survivors, but the spark of a future no empire could extinguish. And so, the tale of Terran Vey and Kilena Stormborn becomes more than a story of survival, it becomes a testament to the power of trust forged in the unlikeliest of places. A lone human traitor, once dismissed as fragile and foolish, dared to believe that honor still mattered in a galaxy consumed by greed and fear. A Karathi warrior, bound in chains and branded as nothing more than fury incarnate, discovered that even in her darkest hour, there were those who would see her not as a weapon, but as kin. Together, they crossed pirate nebulae, syndicate ambushes, and the treacherous belt of ash, facing odds that no sane soul would choose. And at the heart of it all, they did not just reclaim a world, they proved that courage, when shared, can topple even empires. Keros would remember the Ember Ark's fire in the sky. Generations would tell of the human who stood unafraid, and of the Stormborn princess who chose alliance over isolation. Their bond, born not of conquest or contract, but of honor freely given, would echo across time. And for us, perhaps there is a lesson too, that hope is never as fragile as it seems, and that sometimes, the smallest act of faith can change the destiny of worlds. If you've enjoyed this journey through the stars, I'd love for you to join me on more adventures. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of sci-fi wonder, like this video if it lit even a spark of imagination, and share it with someone who believes in the power of hope against impossible odds. Together, let's keep the stars burning bright.